So I'm going to talk today, especially this morning, I'm going to talk about two different aspects. One is promise making, and the other is promise keeping. Okay? In promise making side, I'm going to check with three things. One is clarity, and second, justice, third, also about over promising problem. Okay? Let's start with clarity. Good contracts set clear boundaries and responsibilities that to both parties involved, and it protects both parties. I explained this already. Just to give you some example, I remember two stories. One, both are stories about two Christian businessmen. One is a Christian dentist. He was fully devoted to Christian and studied his dental office. He loved God, and so he decided to treat his employees really well. So he hired a couple of employees and really gave a lot of salaries and did whatever he wanted. I mean, great treatment he had with the employees. The problem is, over years, they took it for granted and asked more and more and more, working less and less and less. And then someday he said, "Oh, something is wrong. I really want to fire these people." But the problem is, they know that he's Christian. He really struggled with whether he had to fire these people or not. In this case, but he didn't make clear contracts in the beginning. So there's no standard to measure everything against it. Okay? So he's kind of abused by kind of greedy employees, right? But it's possible because he didn't make a clear contract from the beginning. Start from fuzzy and give more. If whenever you have money, throw it to them. There's no clear contract agreement between them. The business owner somehow is abused by the other party. I have a totally different. Another case is the opposite. There's a business owner. The business is great, based on great vision to God, like amazing vision, and started a business for God. And then the person hired a couple of employees, Christians. Okay, one of them was my friend. After listening to those vision of the company, the person decided to change his job to this position because he want to serve God. The position is, in worldly point of view, is lower than the previous job, but she or he did it for the company because it's great vision, right? The problem is the owner kind of break the boundary, like give the person a lot of overwork, weekend, night, day, call him. There's no privacy. And the person starts to struggle about it. Because on the one hand, I want to do this for God, but the other, you feel like everything's violated. I didn't mean it to, right? Work this way, like overwork every. Oh, okay. And the person actually decided to quit the job. The problem is actually, later on, 5 people in a row, they quit the job, same position. And I interviewed the owner, but the owner's perception is something like this: why Christians are not devoted? Do you think it's right? It's not about devotion, it's about the expectation. We need to make a clear expectation that protect both parties. Otherwise, we can easily cross the boundary to each other. And the contract becomes no longer a blessing to both parties. And I think this is consistent with what Bible says. Remember the owner of vineyard, hired laborers morning, noon, and afternoon. But he promised one denarius. We call denarion, right? Denarius for each person. But they complained about it. This is what he said. Friend, I'm not being unfair to you. Didn't you agree to work for a denarius? Take your pay and go. Don't I have the right to do what I want with my own money? So when the other party tried to abuse or break the covenant or contract, this thing will protect both parties. So clarity, guys, I think it's fine. It's strange that in churches, people say, 은혜롭게 해. 은혜롭게 해. Like, do it graciously. Equal, do it ambiguously. Right? But that's not necessarily right. Sometimes it's very important to make clear expectation with brother and sister. In church, so many times it's violated, and leaders have assumption about the expectation, and there's two different expectations. There's conflict right there. So it applies to all our ministries in church. Second issue is about is justice. The good contract is based on voluntary and informed choices of both parties. Sometimes this is not, this is violated. Sometimes people kind of deceive, hide certain critical information. Later on, here we go, right? But this is not just. It's not a just contract, and also usury, 고리대금 in Korean word. Sometimes people pushed in to make a contract. It's not their voluntary will, but their circumstances is pushed into that position and make bad contract. Good contract also bring benefits for both parties involved. Nowadays many people, many Christians, say that we are doing a legal business. Great, right? We have to respect legal or law, but all the legal business practice do not guarantee benefits all the parties. Sometimes it's legal, but still can harm people. Disagree? For example, if you're running a restaurant, okay, you can use some ingredient that is not really good for health, but it's not necessarily violating law. Very cheap. Okay. And people talk about ethical business practice. That's great. Ethical means you don't really harm other people, right? Because you're ethical. But we Christians can go beyond either legal or ethical. We go even beyond, which we want to bless people, not just no harm or illegal practice. We can go further, which is about blessing of both parties. This is the yes.
To my understanding, covenant and promise are same. Or covenant is in Korean Torah.
언약, 약속. 약속 is promise. 언약 is covenant.
So 언약 is
소원 is vow. Okay. Covenant and contract are very similar. Very similar. When God did it, it's called covenant. Or it's more godly or religious word. Okay, look at this. Let's think about an example of buyer and seller. We go negotiate, right? A lot of times. This is the how we can understand this. For example, this is a buyer's utility or budget. But there's a seller. This is seller's cost, $50, for example. The buyer's limit is $100, for example. This is a minimum. If the price, the negotiation price goes below, it's broken because it hurts seller's side. This is maximum because buyer is not going to pay more than he can pay, right? when the price goes down into that area, it is become very oppressive to seller. If the price goes that way, it's very oppressive to buyer because it's going close to maximum. Usually all the business contract happens in between. I call it a reasonable contract because at least it benefits both sides, right? Both parties. And usually determined by market price. And a little more or less, right? Powerful. Sometimes the buyer's market, it goes all the way down there. Seller's market goes all the way down there. It's moving. And also some people make pricing based on cost, like they apply like 10% margin or 20% margin. It's called cost pricing. Or value pricing, which means, regardless of market value, regardless of your cost, think about how much the other person can pay and make the price. Good example is education. Parents, for education, they do whatever they can do, right? The value of education is so high. So some people can exploit those values, like ridiculous amount of tuition, regardless of cost, right? But this is called a reasonable contract. But JBS recommendation is kind of middle ground, based on the Bible. Love your neighbor as yourself. Yeah? Not more, not less. Right? Going to middle ground. I know it sounds naive, but same thing to employee-employee relationship. This is employer's labor value to employee's labor value to employer, and employee's labor cost. This is minimum. If you go below that, then it hurts employees. And if it's more than that, that means it hurts employer. Again, same thing. Oppressive to employees, oppressive to employers. So contract should happen in between. JBS recommendation. If it goes too high, right, then that side, then your employer will find someone else to fill your job at less cost. And if it goes too lower to this side, then the employer will find another job in another place, right? So it's kind of. But important thing is, when you do this, it really promotes sustainable and long-term relationships. It's not a naive things. Actually, when you go that way, when you bless both parties, it results in a sustainable and long-term relationship. Good example is Samsung and Apple. And I think Brother O talked about Apple. Steve Jobs is kind of magic person, right? He influenced so much people in this world at this time. I'm so proud of Samsung and in many ways, and they did a great job. But Samsung is kind of known to be a company that really pushed the price down and down until the contractors just barely survive. They just and then stop there, right? So they're really known to have that kind of practices. But it's not only the Samsung, but most organization business world have powerful, and this is bargaining power. Try to do that. They squeeze them as far as they can go until the other party barely survive. And this is kind of standard approach, and every people know that that's rule, right? But Apple did a lot of different things, and Apple changed the paradigm of business world in many ways. I'm going to share with you when I have more time, but one of them is this. Apple never had to do that. When Apple made a contract with subcontractors, they guaranteed a sufficient margin for the subcontractors. It not only allow them to have long-term relationship, but give enough margin to make a lot of innovations within themselves. And see how it happened. That's possible. It's not a naive thing. Nobody even challenged that possibility. If you're managers in organization, I just want to say 3 more things in especially talking about justice. You know, in organizations, people make contract only as a one-to-one relationship, but you have to deal with a lot of people at the same time, right? So there's more issues related to justice happens. First one is called distributive justice. Sounds difficult, but very simple concept. Like people closely watch how the important resources are distributed in organization. Either money, promotion, right? And then if they think, oh, this person, I work same hour, but this person paid more. When we see the difference, unfair, people start to withdraw their commitment, and the trust between employers and employees is broken. To be very careful, to fair across to other people. Second concept is procedural justice. Even if the resources are fairly shared, but when people see the process is wrong or unfair, the same thing happens. People think the employer is not trustworthy and withdraw the commitment. The good example is the promotion decision. You know, in many organizations, you work together, and suddenly this person is promoted as a manager. Okay? Could be right decision, but when there's no explanation, when there's no explanation given, or no objective procedures in organization, people think it's unfair, and they start to withdraw their commitment. Finally, interpersonal justice. People tend to have a sense of dignity of a human being. Okay, so when this thing is violated, when they think the employer mistreated employees, same thing happens. They withdraw their commitment, and motivation hurts. You know, in United States, companies are generally nice. You're not treated really badly, but it happens when people fire, lay off employees. There's horror stories. One day you go to work and your car doesn't work. Or you go work and your desk is removed. There's a box. A box there, and police are standing. You devote your life to the company, and that's the result. The person will leave the organization, but the problem is the survivors. When they watch that, they don't trust the employer anymore and withdraw their commitment and do just only whatever they're told to do. That's what happens. So if you're in the managerial position, think about what's going on in terms of the justice. So this is second topic. When you make contract, think about justice. Justice is not like an abstract thing. It's a very tangible thing. It happens every contract we make. But what if I have no power? I think it applies to most over here. But accepting unjust contracts, right? I have no power. Good news, God is in your side. Now this verse is real to you, right? God works righteousness and justice for all the oppressed. And God will correct the unjust. Here it is, you who trample the needy and do away with the poor of the land. I will never forget anything they have done. But even if you made unjust contract is contract. We need to remain faithful to what we have promised. Third topic is overpromising. Overpromising means making promises more than you can keep. But this is a huge issue in the modern business world because two things. One, most corporations is a limited liability, which means they are not responsible for they are only limited. They are responsible for only limited amount of resources. More than that, like bankrupted, and then they are protected. Okay. That's one reason. Many organizations in the business, okay, managers are not taking the responsibility. They don't have to. Second, a lot of business, if you go to business school, they will teach you to maximize the asset value, you need to have a lot of debt. If you don't have debt, you're not maximizing your asset. Okay? So because of this, it's like general rule that people take a lot of risk, which means it increases chances of breaking promises. As a Christian, I really want to challenge this concept because Bible says, now listen, you who said today or tomorrow we'll go to this and that city, spend a year there, carry on business and make money. Why? You do not even know what will happen tomorrow. I know we sometimes take risks, sometimes, I'm not saying that you can't do it, but when you make that decision, be careful. We have to fear God. When we have to think about the situation, we cannot keep the promise. And it not only applies to people running business, but in every day, we make a lot of promises to other people. Oh, I'm going to do this, okay, I'm going to do this, right? A lot of promises, but sometimes we overpromise. We cannot keep those promises. These are three issues that I want to discuss with you today in terms of making promises.